Okay, welcome back. So what we're going to do today is we're going to fit out a Hobbywing 1800 kV brushless system into the ECTO. So in the last video, which was the first test run of the ECTO, one of the major drawbacks that I believe that this has is that the ESC's drag brake is too harsh. So it's not like the 1080 ESC where you can adjust the drag brake so that when you're accelerating downhill, it's still applying the drag brake rate. This doesn't have that, so the risk is that the problem is that the rear end just wants to flip over and it wants to do a nosedive. So I already rolled it once and I don't want to do it again unnecessarily. So I think the best option is to put in the Fusion SE. I could put in a 1080 ESC, but thinking about it, the way it's set up, the ESC sits here and I've taken that out. As you can see over here, which is quite easy to take out just with a butter knife, just gently going underneath. It's only with some double-sided tape. But as you can see, you've got your steering servo there, and you've got room for another servo. So my intention is I will put in a winch servo there, remove this and run an actual winch. So that's a perfect trade-off really to me, where you're getting, you're winning on two points there. So I'll be able to get better control out of the ECTO, which means less chance of damaging it unnecessarily, and also I'll be able to get that winch in there quite easily by putting a servo winch in there. So I'll just pop the camera down so you can see what I've done. Now, just to kind of save anyone any heartbreak, I want to warn you in advance that when you go to undo the engine screws, which are these ones here, they're very small, they've got a tiny little hex head on there, you must use the correct Allen key. If you do not, you risk the fact that you're going to strip it out and you're not going to be able to get the motor out. So exercise patience when you do that. Even myself, with having the correct Allen key, I found it to be very, very tight. So I'm assuming they put Loctite in there, so you just got to be a bit careful that you don't strip that out, because if you strip that out, it's all over. The only option is that you're going to either grind it out or get some vice grips or something. It's going to be complicated, or you might just change out the ESC with a Hobbywing 1080 ESC if that's what you want to do. But that's just a warning. Now, the other thing that I did, which I didn't get a chance to kind of talk about, was you can see these rock sliders here that I've put on. These ones are quite cheap. They're about $20 on AliExpress AU. They fit perfectly with a slight bit of modification. So you can keep the original sideboards there because they support the rear controlling arms, trailing arms. So you don't want to mess with those. But what I did was, you can't see it, but underneath here, I just shaved away about 5 mil from each of the grooves in here to allow this to slide in and just be screwed into the existing slots that you can see there. So it's definitely achievable. It's a much cheaper option in my opinion than messing around with getting some other aftermarket ones. These ones are solid. They add a little bit of weight, but they're not too heavy, and as I say, they fit perfectly, and you can put them on quite easily without too much fuss. So what I'm going to do now is I'll start by attaching the pinion to the Fusion SE, the 1800 kV. I will mesh the gear, doing so with a bit of paper, which I can demonstrate, and then tighten that up, and from there just put everything back the way it was. So let's pause the video for now, because otherwise it's going to be boring for you to watch, or I can probably do a fast forward actually. So let's do that. Maybe I'll just film and maybe we can go fast forward. I've never fitted one of these before, so this is a first for me. And I've seen some good reviews online. So let's pop it out of the box. So there it is there. These are pretty awesome purely because of the fact that, well, one, you get your brushless system, but they are very reliable and provide a lot of control, which you definitely want, and you're eliminating that space there for the ESC by having it as an all-in-one. Now I just realized that the guy that has sent me this has sent me the wrong connector, which is a pain in the backside. So I'm going to pause the video and see if I've got a T connector that I can solder to this. So let's pause. Okay, back again. So I've managed to find a T connector and fix that issue. Just one thing I would pass on to you actually, now I haven't meshed the gears as yet, but the screws that attach the motor, sorry for my terrible camera work, the screws that attach this to there, these are the originals. I don't know if you can see that, but long story short, the screws are for the Hobbywing are going to be shorter. So as I said, this is the original. You're going to have to get a couple of shorter ones because it will bottom out on the Fusion SE, and you don't want to risk damaging anything inside there by putting a longer screw than should be in there. So what I'm going to do now is quickly mesh up the pinion and against the spur, and then start reassembling. So let's keep going. Alright, so I've propped this up on a couple of boxes so that I can freely turn the axles. I've got my piece of paper, which is going to be my mesh clearance, and I'm going to turn the axle so the paper will insert. So from here I will tighten up. This is the tricky thing because you've got, and I'm going to have to turn this on its side now, and we'll come back and check it, but because it's easier to come underneath here and tighten this up. I want to be very careful because I've got my coffee sitting on the bench and I don't want to tip it over. So before I tighten this though, I'm going to make sure that that is snug, the pinion against the crown. It's really, really awkward. So I haven't tightened it up super tight because at this stage I don't know if I've got it 100%, but it seems to be good. It's really moving, it's not over tight. I'll snug that one down a little bit and see what it feels like. Still feels good. Okay, so I'm making sure I've got the right Allen key here, because as I said at the beginning, you do not want to strip these out, because it would be an absolute headache in the future if you're wanting to swap out a motor, and don't over tighten it. I always say just a little bit above hand tight. So let's pop that over here and see how it that seems good to me. I don't know if you can see that. I'll swap it around this side over here, but that seems to be quite okay to me. I'm happy with that. So with that in mind, I will pause the video and start reassembling. Then we'll do some programming and then do a test run. So we'll be back. Okay, we're back. So we've got the T-plug connected, all fixed up. We've got the transmitter on, and according to the instructions, we need to press and hold the power button until it flashes, which I will now do. This is up on boxes, so it's not going to run away anywhere. All my trim positions are at neutral, so we'll press this. Right, so now it's not flashing, which means I probably didn't hold it long enough. But let's see if it's actually working. Right, so I can see the problem straight away is that forward is reverse, and apparently that is adjustable by the program card. So what I'm going to do is power it off and repower it back on. Alright, we're back. So I've got the transmitter on, got the trim positions, the throttle to max, and the where are we? So you basically need to have your throttle and steering trims set to neutral, and then in terms of the other settings, if you have them on your controller, they need to be set on the max setting. So the next process is to press the power button until it starts to flash, and then release it. Right, so right now I believe if I press it once, that should select neutral. So that's neutral done. Then if I bring the throttle fully forward, press it once, that should be forward. Bring it back to neutral, put it in reverse, press the button again, release, and that tells me that that is now set. I do have to check, let's see. Yeah, so that is actually running in reverse, which my understanding can be easily fixed by the program card. So I'm going to pause now and get into the program card. Alright, so we're back now with the program card. This program card came straight out of my Hobbywing 1080 ESC, which will work perfectly well in the Fusion SE version. And I've plugged it in correctly to the program port, as you can see there, which is just next to the power button there. Make sure that you're plugging in the wires correctly, so you've got let me get the focus there so you might be able to see the positive and negative symbols there. So, and the same going with the program card as well, that the wires are connected properly. Once you do that, we can then turn on the ESC, which will then bring up the numbers on the program card. The first number is the RPM throttle matching. The default value there is 1, and I'm leaving it to 1. To select the next item on the menu, just click the item button. It's going to take you to item number 2. The default value there is number 1. That's your LiPo cells. Because I'm just running 2S, I'm leaving it the default value there. You may want to change that if you're running 3S. The next value there is 3, which is the cutoff voltage. The default value again there is 3. I'm leaving it at the default. Next value is 4, which is the thermal protection. That should be enabled. So number 1 is perfect. So leave that as is. The next one is your motor direction, which is the one that I stumbled on because when I first plugged this in, forward was reverse and reverse was forward. To change that, I set the value from number 1 to number 2, and I simply did that by selecting the value, and then that will shift the numbers, as you can see there. So I'll put it on 2 and then select OK to save it, and now that's saved. So the next item there is number 6, which is the BEC voltage. I've left that at the default value of number 1. The next one there is the drag brake, and that's at mid value number 5. It's recommended to leave it there, so I'm leaving it there. Moving on to the next item there, which is number 8, which is the drag brake rate. This is the rate when you are, for instance, going down a steep slope and you're on the throttle. The drag brake is also applying as you are going down, but when you lift off and go into neutral, how hard does that drag brake engage? On a light vehicle like this, the risk factor is that the rear end will flip up and it'll want to, flip the back and nose over, which you don't want. The default value was 5. I've changed it to 4. I'm going to experiment with it. On my other vehicles, which are a bit heavier, I've just left it as is. But this vehicle, with the reedy ESC, it was way too harsh when it came off the drag brake. It wanted to constantly flip over on its nose. And this was probably 90% of the reason why I chose to install the Fusion SE. Because other than that, it was very smooth, no issues whatsoever, but that definitely let it down majorly because you do not want to be rolling your nice RC going down a steep embankment or something like that. So it's definitely worthwhile considering swapping out either to a 1080 ESC or a Fusion SE of some sort. So the final value to get to is the reverse force, and that's if, for example, if you don't like reverse to suddenly kick in very harsh, you can play around with that. The default value there is 4, and I've left it at 4. So that's basically it. So once you're done, you would click OK. You would then take the power button, turn it off, unplug, and unplug from there. Make sure you put the rubber protector back in there because that's going to protect that from getting moisture in there. And you can test to make sure everything is okay by turning it back on. I will now turn on the transmitter. Hopefully we're all good. Well, we've got our steering. As you can see, you probably can't tell, but the throttle is actually working properly now. So it all looks good. I might play around with some of the settings on the transmitter just to see which works best. I might actually pause the video and then pop it on the ground and see what it's like. Alright, let's do the test over the rice bags. Well, I would call that a success. That was highly smooth, highly controlled. There's such a massive difference in the performance between that and the stock standard Reedy ESC. Not to knock the stock ESC, but when I first got that as a birthday present and opened it out of the box and drove it around, I thought, wow, this is amazing. It's so smooth. But when I took it out for the first run and took it up a very steep embankment, probably it would have been easily close to, you know, maybe 47-degree angle going up, very, very steep. It had no problems going up, but the problem is the moment you let off the throttle, the drag brake didn't hold. And then when you were coming down, if you even just slightly hit the trigger, it would just run away. And then if you release the trigger, put it back in neutral, as I said, it would want to just flip over. And I did roll it once. It has to have its christening, that's life. It's going to get scratched up. But the whole point of doing this change is that you don't want to destroy something that you've paid good money for, and that there's no reason to flip it over, you know, unless you make your own mistake, and then you can blame yourself for that. So I'm going to put this back together. We're going to go out and find a spot, maybe the same spot as yesterday, try it in the same spot and see what the difference is. But clearly from running it over those rice bags, that's just a humongous difference in the control. I was barely touching the throttle there, and I didn't even have to touch the throttle. I just left it at the lowest speed and it just crawled over there with no problem whatsoever. So I'm looking forward to trying it out. So let's pause the video and we'll be back.